Weight Loss 101. So the first thing that I want to tell you is that most of the things that you think you know about nutrition are probably wrong. And we've all been told a lot of things, and I think that if I got into a room with 10 other people and we started talking about what constitutes a healthy diet, most of you would have different ideas than I do. And I had a lot of those ideas too until I started doing the primary reading. So what is it that constitutes a healthy diet? And before I start talking about diet, I'll tell you that in my early days, the first response that almost everybody had as a solution for losing weight was exercising, starting to walk, getting some more walking in. And so the first thing I want to tell you is that exercise alone is not the answer. In fact, the only demographic that can consistently lose weight just by exercising are males under the age of 30. And so a lot of times I'll see a male who's 50 and he says, I wrestled, I know how to lose weight. You just go into the gym and get a lot of exercise. And that worked when you were 20. It doesn't work when you're over 30. So exercise is really important. I don't want to give anybody the idea that they shouldn't exercise. In fact, I think that every day that you eat and every day that you breathe is a day that you get exercise. But from a standpoint of weight, the way that you're going to lose weight is by changing what you eat, not by exercising. The most important thing, the most important advantage of exercise is exercise will help you maintain your weight. So you'll lose weight by changing what you eat. You'll keep it off by exercising. Okay, does everybody recognize this? This is a version of the Department of Agriculture's food pyramid, which was introduced to our country in 1991, roughly the time that I came to this area. It was meant to be the government's official recommendations for what things you should eat. And even though they have revised it and no longer published the food pyramid and have modified it into what's called My Healthy Plate, from a functional standpoint, there are very few differences. And if you'll notice at the bottom of the pyramid, it recommends that you eat between 6 and 11 servings of healthy grains, including bread, cereal, rice, and pasta, then less of fruits and vegetables, much less of milks and meats, and then fats, oils, and sweets sparingly. A few words of reference about the food pyramid. First of all, the food pyramid was plagiarized by an almost identical food pyramid that was put out in Sweden in 1970, when that country was going through a food shortage, a famine, crop failure, and a recession at the same time. So their government struggled with how do we get enough calories on the plates of our citizens so that they don't starve? And their solution was the food pyramid, because it gave the cheapest amount of calories, the grains as the main source. Flash forward to the mid-70s when a blue panel scientific commission was instituted under Secretary of Agriculture George McGovern after his failed attempt at the presidency. They gathered together all the world's experts to try to come up with the recommendations for America, for our food. And they looked through all of the data, and the scientific committee came up with the recommendations that we should eat between 1 and 3 servings of healthy grains a day. Between 1 and 3, not 6 to 11, or not 6 to 11, 1 to 3. The political wing of the Department of Agriculture looked at the recommendations and realized that those recommendations would bankrupt the food stamp program. And so they struggled with, do we give one set of recommendations to those people who can afford food and another set of recommendations to those who we're buying the food for them? or do we give one recommendation to everyone? They came up with this. Louise Light, who was the chairman of the scientific committee, resigned in protest, and these were her words. No one needs that much bread and cereal in a day unless they're a longshoreman or a football player. And giving Americans a free starch-gorging pass will unleash an unprecedented epidemic of obesity and diabetes. Again, that was in 1991. At that time, the rate of overweight was about 8%. The rate of obesity was about 15%. Flash forward 25 years, the rate of overweight is about 67%. The rate of obesity is about 32%. Want to say a few words about the big fat lie. What you have heard most of your life is that eating fat and eating saturated fat is bad for you, and it's bad for your heart particularly. In the late 50s, Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack while he was president. Of course, you know that when your president gets sick, that's a big deal, and it led to a significant amount of funding for research and a whole lot of speculation about what we could do to prevent heart disease. And what came out of that was what's called the diet heart hypothesis. And remember, a hypothesis is an untested question. The hypothesis goes, if you eat fat, it causes an increase in cholesterol in your blood vessels, and that cholesterol slowly builds up just like plaque builds up in your drain, and finally it builds up to the point that you have a heart attack. Now, for 50 years, in various ways, we've been trying to prove that hypothesis. And here's one of those interesting things that if you go to the primary literature, you'll find that we've never been able to prove that eating fat causes a worsening of your cholesterol. And we've never been able to show that reducing your fat improves your chances. And yet we cling to that thought that if you have any heart problems or if you're worried about heart problems, if they run in your family, you should be on a low-fat diet and a low-saturated fat diet. But again, there's been many studies that have looked at this, have concluded that they can't prove that eating fat causes heart disease, but yet the recommendations remain, well, we still think that you shouldn't eat fat.